Welcome back to the news, everybody. Today we've got a really important story, actually. It impacts all of us, and you've probably seen headlines like this one, right? Quote, publishers are absolutely terrified that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes.
I haven't seen headlines like this, but I did hear the argument from the publisher and the company side of the gaming market and the gaming industry that they are like really concerned about like not making any money, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, which we'll get into it further in the video. But like, it's literally like you're talking about a 20-year-old video game that has never been touched. It has been shelved. As a company, you're not making any money out of it. For the last 20 years, it just doesn't exist. The game is just dead. The game doesn't exist. Virtually speaking, it's gone. So like, why wouldn't it be bad? Why would it be bad if it's used for recreational purposes? If that, it just makes no sense. Unless they're planning on making money 100 years into the future, like, oh yeah, we're gonna just come back to this game 100 years later.
That's actually a quote. So the US Copyright Office has struck down a major effort for game preservation. That's a big headline, but do you know what's even worse? It barely begins to cover how stupid, how frustrating this entire situation is. What it is the industry dragon that is the ESA, ensuring that the business side of gaming is firmly suppressing the art side. And what makes this so ridiculous, infuriating, and absolutely malicious is the fact that 87% of video games before 2010 are no longer commercially available.
Which is crazy if you think about it. That's one thing that I would just never expect, like the percentage wise. It's like 87% is just like before, like it's so much, it's so many. It's like essentially the entire game industry essentially like just taken off the shelf. And it's not, you can't play it anymore. Like you cannot play it anymore. You have to get on Amazon. You have to get on eBay. You have to get on something. Temu. No, I'm just joking. But you have to get on something to actually buy a very old console, a very old game, which both of them are probably really skyrocketing in price. Thinking how there's a high demand for them because, well, they're now just, luxury commodities. If a game is not being sold anymore online or physically, that means that there's a just limited amount of copies. And like, look at this, 87%. That's crazy number, man. That's like essentially the entirety of just the gaming industry just deleted out of existence, which is crazy.
So ESA, what are you hoarding? Okay, let's get into the story. To start this off, we gotta be on the same page. So here's how the whole shebang works. Every 3 years, the US Copyright Office offers the chance for changes to be made to how copyright is applied. And obviously it's in the US, but that matters because, most of the games happen in the US.
That's true. There are, of course, we all know that there are like multiple game studios from other countries, Polish, Russian, German, French. There are like a lot of different game companies all around the world. There are like Asian ones, especially, right? Especially Chinese ones. You got Pal World. You got Celebrate, if I'm not mistaken. That's also Asian. Producer or publisher. You got Black Myth Wukong very recently. So like all of this stuff is just like, of course they're like examples of like, yes, worldwide gaming, but majority of the games are especially produced in America, and they're usually catered to American audience. Most of the time, not always.
Now, in January 2024, the heroes of today's video, the Software Preservation Network, they began attempting to get their petition forward to the Copyright Office. They had two asks. These are basically tweaks to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Their first one is to allow multiple simultaneous remote users for non-game software, and their second ask to allow for remote access to video games for the purposes of research and education. So in simple terms, what they're basically saying is, hey, Copyright Office, we would like it if multiple people could check out software, non-game software, like say an application or an operating system in a remote fashion, and multiple users could do that, for academic research. And the second ask is, could people remotely access video games for academic purposes? because, games are art. They matter, and if we look at the past...
That's true. Most people don't think about that aspect of video games. Games are considered art by many governments around the world. Like, it's officially considered a form of art, like paintings, like movies and stuff like that, or like music for that matter, right? So when you really think about it, it actually makes sense. It makes a lot of sense that they should be treated as such.
Might just learn and have better games. So here's the wild thing. Currently, libraries can preserve and distribute video games, but it's crazy the limitations. They can only physically do it with the original software and hardware, and they can't lend them. They cannot lend them, right? So a library would effectively have to maintain piles of legacy hardware.
That's like very weird. When you think about it, that's like extremely weird, right? It's like, imagine going to a library, imagine logging into this computer that looks like this right here. It's like some old piece of software, and then you're only capable of playing that video game in the library. Good luck ever hearing anything, because there are no speakers for the computer itself, because the library is supposed to be hush and quiet. So it's like, you're not even experiencing the video game for yourself anyway in the first place. You're not even getting the entire experience most of the time, right? And then there's like time, how long you can stay in the library, how long you can actually play it, and if next day you come back, somebody else is using the computer, you're gonna wait 30 minutes, an hour, just to sit on the computer again. And then after you sit on the computer, what are you gonna tell people? Oh, I'm just playing a video game? It's like, what is gonna happen when other people come in and want to use the computer for whatever purposes? It's really, really unintuitive, if that makes sense. Like, it's as if it's like made to be hard. It's made to be inconvenient, if that makes sense.
Going to happen. I'll be actually blunt here. This is worse than useless. The only people who can research video games are people who live near a magical gaming library with loads of things, or that build a private collection out of pocket.
Which is again another thing, right? Like, most libraries are dedicated to preserving books and nothing else. They don't have video games. Your average library, when you go there, is not going to have a old retro video game. It's most likely just going to have books. You're going to go and ask the people who work there, it's like, hey, do you have a video game? And they're going to be like, no. Like, why would you come to a library for a video game? They'd probably be surprised, if anything else.
And even that's kind of bad, because preservation without access is a bit like arguing that Smaug the Defiler, or whatever he was called in Tolkien, was preserving the riches of Erebor for future generations by making sure nobody else could have them.
Amazing.
It's not preservation, it's hoarding, and while individual collectors may be really good people and then the game's out, that's not a real solution. But now for the bit that should make all of our blood.
Yeah, that's not a real solution, because if you hand the process to an individual, what's gonna happen is that they can just abuse it, because they have no government oversight, because you're dealing with an individual. It's a private stuff. It's not public. It's not under any kind of governmental control or regulation or whatever. So you go to a guy who's like, hey, I can hand out you this game and I can lend it to you for this month, and feel free to use it. And then you get a computer virus. You get like something on your computer, right? You just cannot trust people, because they're not government employees, they're just random people, right?
This restriction is not applied to any other medium, right? No other art form. Film? Nope. Television? Nope. Books? Nope.
That's true. That is true. Most, at least for the majority of the things that he just mentioned here, books, movies, like anything else, music, they don't really have anything like this. It's only video games that have anything that is similar to this, which is like very, very interesting when you think about it. The video games do get a different type of treatment, right? It's not equal.
It turns out that from a legal perspective, games are uniquely punished. They are uniquely under attack.
They shouldn't be
And
stupid.
The Software Preservation Network wants to improve this. The people who don't want to improve it are the ESA. The ESA suck. They have been long-time industry villains, and we're going to talk a lot about them today.
I don't know who those
And
are.
we're not just preserving video
This is
games,
the first time
we're
I'm hearing about
preserving
this
our wrinkly
organization.
gamer brains, and doing so with today's sponsor, who are going to help you transform doom scrolling time into skills you can be proud of. And for me, that means righting a bit of a wrong from the past, actually. So it's brilliant.org/Bellular News.
Not skipping the ad because we're watching the video. It's producing literal slop content. Not gonna pass the ad. I'm just gonna watch it.
They're now for me a healthy, fulfilling habit. You see, they're all about learning by doing across thousands of lessons in maths, data science, programming, and AI, and it's all on their gorgeous site and app. And what sets them apart is how tactile and interactive everything is, which is the complete opposite of the school system that, as an example, I went through. Here's a few highlights, right? Planning a music festival by moving around light cones in a space-time diagram, which is awesome. Playing snooker to understand the rules of collision, or in their data science pathway, which will have you working with real-world data from the likes of Starbucks, Airbnb, and Spotify. And the wrong that I talked about writing is just, I ended up doing so many YouTube videos that I kind of neglected personal development, but with Brilliant, I've got that back again. And personally, I use the mobile app. I just love the layout, the illustrations, the UX, the animations are delightful. You can just feel the passion behind it, honestly, and it means that my phone is a positive object in my life, not a terrible doom scrolling thing. So you can turn that into a great...
I'm not going to lie, and now granted I haven't really used Brilliant ever in my entire life. It looks mostly catered to maybe people of younger age, if that makes sense.
Daily learning habit today at brilliant.org/Bellular News. When you go there, you'll get 30 days for free. And
It looks very simplified, less technical. It looks very visual. So if you have a kid, for example, and you want them to like think and do brainstorming and whatnot, you can just give it to them and they just like just deal with this stuff, and it'll be great for their development as well.
At 20% off the annual plan. Time to introduce today's villain. The Entertainment Software Association, ESA, is a body that represents most major devs and publishers in America. And you may remember them from plenty of little dramas. They had an amazing one where they leaked the information, right, of all the press people from E3 signups. So that was pretty damn bad. And
Amazing.
of course, E3 in general, they were actually...
What is this?
Pre-signup.
It turns out this weekend's news about the ESA inadvertently leaking journalists' details is not without precedent. GameIndustry.biz has learned that databases of personal information for media professionals attending E3 are also available from 2 previous years. These lists were publicly available until earlier today, when the ESA stated also, and GameIndustry.biz confirmed that they had been taken down entirely. Oh, right, of course. After it gets out, they're like, oops, we did an oopsie. While both these events were so long ago, the details are likely out of date. The fact that they were publicly available until earlier today raises concerns. The databases have contained more than 2,800 listings for journalists who attended E3, and more than 3,300 for those who attended another. This is like very interesting if you think of a little bit of side tangent. I've actually had a friend in university who would just defend this idea that like big video game companies don't actually, how can I say this in a way that I won't get sued, give out incentives to certain journalists so that they review their games on day one favorably so that more people buy their games. That was my argument, that it actually happens and it's been happening for decades. And I told this, and then one of my friends in university were like adamantly defending the point that no, that cannot happen and that never happened. I'm not exactly sure if he was messing with me. He seemed very serious. But yeah, no, this is a thing. In the gaming industry especially, I don't know the other industry, so if you're from another industry like music, movie industry, whatever, do let me know in the comment section down below. But in the gaming industry, this is what happens, right? A lot of journalists just get incentives, quote unquote, to favorably review games on day one so that more people buy it. It's just a well-known industry inside knowledge, I guess. It's like an open secret, if that makes sense.
So that was pretty damn bad. And of course, E3 in general, they were actually running that and they had a complete inability to make E3 a sustainable event that would work, which is insane because...
Yeah, E3 got absolutely destroyed, which is interesting, which is like, I mean, gaming industry is the most fastest growing entertainment industry in the entire world. It's the biggest entertainment industry in the entire world at this very current given moment. So it makes you think like, how are you not capable of handling the biggest event of the biggest industry when it comes to entertainment, and you just screw it all up and then it just goes bankrupt and you're not able to support it, which is very well weird when you think about it, right?
It's not like loads of other groups have, actually managed to do that successfully for years. No, the ESA are just useless morons. But the point is, they're not here for us. They're actually not here for video games either. They are not interested in games as a medium. To the ESA, games are an industry only, and they will have no problem suppressing the overall impact and success of video games in the long run if that means they're seen to be protecting the short-term interest of their members, because their members are not you and me. Their members are not a regular developer working at some big company. No, their members are corporate entities. So if you're an indie developer, a gamer, if you just want to do a startup, the ESA should be your friend, but they're not your friend. Now, this is why their arguments against the Software Preservation Network are so infuriating. The ESA is essentially arguing that games are not a medium worthy of academic study. Here's some words.
Not true. Not true. The only proof that you need that video games are a medium that requires and deserves academic research is that go to Australia, go to Melbourne, go to the city centre, and there is a museum for video games, and in there it is clearly stated when you go into that museum that Australian government recognizes video games as a form of art. You go to Germany, same thing. You go to France, same thing. You go to Britain, same thing. You go to America, same thing. Canada, same thing. Literally every single first world country in the world is like, yeah, video games, medium, it's art, it's academic, it's whatever. And it's like, ESA is like, nope, that's not the case at all. ESA is like, world governments, who are they? We don't know them. We've never seen them before.
From the ruling. The ESA's lawyers contended that there would be significant risk that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. Oh no! They further argued that the expanded...
It's like, wow, imagine you have a piece of like a track, like a piece of song or like a music out of like an album. Imagine ever having the audacity to even have the thought that you're going to listen to that music. How can you do that? Are you a monster? Are you going to listen to music? Oh my God, how can you?
Exemption would give preservation institutions
absolute clown behavior, by the way.
Too much discretion regarding how they provide remote access to preserved works, and that it did not contain appropriately tailored restrictions to ensure that uses would be limited to teaching, research, or scholarship uses. They believe that removing the premises limitation would adversely affect the existing games market.
How is it going to affect the market? Is there a company that's like sitting on the corner that they have a game that they haven't touched for the last 20 years? And what are they going to do? They have no plans to return back to it? But what about the 20 years? You did nothing with it. You sat on it. Like, what are you? Avatar? James Cameron? You're going to wait another 15 years to make a third movie? Sorry, third video game? Is that what this is?
For older games. So that's what the ESA had to say. The Copyright Office, of course, agreed, because I suppose that's what they would do, and they explicitly cited the idea of the market for legacy video games potentially being harmed, and then they denied the petition, meaning that for...
What market for legacy video games? Just a bunch of people on eBay selling old consoles and video games because how rare they are for like thousands of dollars? What is this, Pokemon trading card? What is this?
next 3-year period, that's it, petition failed. Now, this was always going to be the ESA's defense, and in fact, in May 2024, IGN
Oh, almost forgot.
spoke to an ESA lawyer about this case because basically they saw similar arguments in 2018 and 2021. Here is what they learned, and I'll read from their reporting. The spokesperson told me that the trade group absolutely sees games as art, but also as copyrighted works. Quote, that means that universal preservation must always be balanced against the rights of copyright owners to make business decisions about the
rights of copyright owners that absolutely do nothing with what they have. That's the problem here.
Legacy market. Now you can see how they could make
now
that
granted
argument.
You also have to understand, like, if it's your own work, if it's your copyrighted work, you get to do whatever you want with it. Have fun with it. Sit on it for 30 years. I don't care. But don't go out and lash on people when they tell you, hey, maybe, you know, we should preserve this game so that everybody else can experience it.
But as we'll very, very soon see, it actually falls completely to pieces under scrutiny. Now, they could point to having over 2,500 games that they donated to the Library of Congress, which does mean, I suppose, that if you live in Washington, D.C., congrats. You're actually one of the few people in the country with a support network to become.
Few people in the entire world. A few people in the entire world. Oh, if I want to play some old piece of video game, what am I supposed to do? Buy a fucking plane ticket, go to America, Washington, D.C., get to the library, play the game? Like, are you out of your damn mind?
An ESA-approved games academic. Now, this happened in 2018, right? It failed. In 2021, it failed. But something is actually changing. In 2024, the Software Preservation Network actually came ready for combat. At the start of the video, I mentioned the 87% number, and that's from the Video Game Availability Study that was prepared in 2023, sponsored by the Software Preservation Network and the Video Game History Foundation. Now, they found that, yes, 87% of all video games produced before the year 2010 are not commercially available. That is real worrying. Now, you might think of GOG, right? You can buy loads of old games there, but again, we're talking about ones that are not commercially available, so anything on GOG doesn't actually count there. But in fairness to GOG, they're trying, and they just launched a preservation program. But they can't do it alone, not even close. A pillar of the ESA's argument, right, is that publishers of games need legal protections that other art forms don't, right? And they're specifically using the legacy market. But here's the thing, 87% of legacy games before 2010 are not commercially available. So how can they say we need to protect the legacy market when the legacy market is tiny, with the vast majority of games not even being commercially available? If these were all commercially available and there was some vibrant way in which we were...
It saddens me a lot that Limbo of the Lost is not available. That game is a gem.
We're all just playing random games from 1997 or 2006. Sure, fine. But that's not the case, because they're not commercially available. So that part of ESA's argument absolutely falls to pieces. But what's even more concerning is the Software Preservation Network modeled their arguments based on, funnily enough, exemptions that have been granted to other mediums. So if the exemption is okay for film, for television, for books, why is it not okay for video games? And in short, those are that it would be accredited academic bodies that do the distribution, right? The idea that professional bodies are the gatekeepers. This is overtly not some sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Don't we all love sharing our peer-to-peer files that we completely own and playing them in our Plex server, perfectly above board? And don't we all manually rip ROMs from game carts that we own? Har, 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 free video games. No, the SPN are literally advocating for something that is locked down and responsible, because the underlying thing here that actually matters is preservation. They say this: our test is based on the Copyright Office's own proposed rules for what kinds of institutions should be recognized as a library. We don't pull this out of the air. This is the Copyright Office's proposal to define what kinds of institutions should have the special privileges that libraries and archives get in the law. So it's not fair to say that our rules are too broad, because they are not. The SPN are absolutely right. But sadly, all of this was expected following the last two attempts to get this to happen, and the way the ESA behaved during the original hearings earlier this year is telling. The ESA are not interested in studies, they are not interested in argument. Do you remember that amazing moment from the UK hearing where Electronic Arts' lawyer said the word surprise mechanics, and suddenly it turned into a great meme that we all sort of enjoyed? Well, arguments made, be they in court, to regulators in a special...
Surprise mechanics, was that the one with the what they call loot boxes and stuff? He, if I'm not mistaken, they called the loot boxes surprise mechanics. It was about something along the lines of gambling or like online gambling, if I'm not remembering it incorrectly.
They're often so juicy because they reveal exactly how companies think. So here's what the ESA said, as captured by Ars Technica. Quote, "I don't think there is, at the moment, any combination of limitations that ESA members would support to provide remote access," ESA lawyer Steve England said. "The preservation organizations want a great deal of discretion to handle very valuable intellectual property."
Very valuable intellectual property is literally just some video game from 1991 that's like cannot run on any of the professional new computers of today's day and age, and it's just like you just have to mod it in and out to even make it work on like modern computers, and it's like nobody even plays it. Nobody knows what game it is. Everybody forgot what game it is because everybody back in the day who played it is now just too old and have like granddaughters and whatnot, or they're just dead. So it's like, what intellectual property? The guy who made the video game is dead, or he's in some hotel or like motel resort, probably in Vegas, gambling. He's having fun. He's like 60 years old. Like nobody cares anymore, mate. Nobody cares.
They have yet to show a willingness on their part in a way that might be comforting to the owners of the IP. And I said that with the inflection that I did because that is infuriating. Because these exemptions literally are there in other art forms and other mediums. And it's not like some American senator who liked to go and say, oh, games are causing the youth to be violent and all of that stuff from, you know, the early 2000s. It's not like some boomer who hates video games is trying to clamp down on them. No, this is our industry's own body attacking the very medium, the very art form. And that just says it all, doesn't it? It's completely ridiculous. All of this is stacked against the people who are trying to change the rules in copyright, the people who actually...
Which is the thing with it, right? It's like you have like big corporations like EA or other stuff that's like part of this organization, but at the same time you also have like indie developers are part of this stuff as well, right? And it's like I doubt it that like indie developers are actually okay with what the organization that they're part of doing. But I can guarantee you that big companies, EA, Ubisoft, or any other company that's like part of this organization, are probably rejoicing because how this organization is acting out, right? Because it works out in favor of them, right?
Care about games as a medium, as an art form of something worthy of...
I mean, you have the new Dragon Ball game that came out. That game hasn't been touched for like, what, 17 years? 11 years, 17 years, something like that. They brought that game from dead. I was like a little baby when that game, original version of it first came out, and then just 20 years later, just dig up that video game's grave. They pull it out the skeletal remains, Frankenstein style, just bring it back. And it's an amazing game. A lot of people like it, but it's like a very, very interesting, right? It's like 20 years later, they bring out these games back. What were you doing for 20 years? Spending the money that you earned with the first one on Las Vegas casinos? I guess that's fair.
Such that the next generation of game designers can actually have a good education and we can learn from the mistakes and the wins of this industry. The US Copyright Office will keep things the same unless there is a shift from the industry, regardless of if it's basically them contradicting their own past logic in, say, film and television. The ESA are not interested in any change here unless they are forced, and as the Software Preservation Network has proven, it's not like these companies are even using this, quote, very valuable intellectual property to make money. because 87% of games produced before 2010 are not even commercially available.
True.
They are the dragons.
The people who are making the money are the ones who are selling their stuff on eBay, and those are just individual people. So that money is not even going to the developer who made the game in the first place anyway. So like, you're not even earning any money, mate. Like, why you wasting everyone's time?
Myth of Tolkien. They are hoarding. They are malicious. Okay, let's bring this home. If 87% of all games don't exist in a purchasable state, then they may as well be vaporware anyway. Activision might love to drop a reference to 1982's Pitfall in a Call of Duty game, or maybe running an emulated version of one of their old games as a mini game, but they're not selling that to anyone. I mean, one of my favorite games of all time is Freelancer, right? It's impossible to purchase.
Man, Star Citizen is never coming out. Just letting everyone know. Star Citizen, the ship that you bought, man, you're never gonna ride that shit. Star Citizen is not coming out. Just letting you know. Our grandkids are probably gonna play that game. Just letting everyone know. Ken, welcome. I use Celsius. I hope you don't mind. Yeah, no, mate. I mean, I also use Celsius. I'm not American, but people call me Fahrenheit for whatever reasons. I kind of run with it. Nah, it's all good, man. It's all good. You use Kelvin. You're a scientist, man. I respect it. Welcome. How you been? How are you doing? You doing good? We're just reacting to a video by Belarus News. This was actually quite my alley. Since I'm in the video game industry anyway. I'm a video game designer / developer anyway. That's like my original title. So this is like quite up my alley. It's like quite a new video, 17 hours ago. Yeah, sure, man. I definitely can try it. Give me the tip, give me the link, and then I'll try it in my free time, and I'll definitely will give you some feedback since I already have your name here on the Twitch anyway. Definitely, man, for sure. I like to play some new video games by like independent indie developers. That's up my alley for sure.
Purchase Freelancer legally, and I don't have my original game discs. So if you like Freelancer, well, I'll leave you to figure out how you could resolve that problem. But it sucks. Even for the industry, it sucks. I'd pay. I would pay. It's a game that I love, but it's not just about.
I never played it, although I heard a lot of great things about the Freelancer. If it actually came out to the PC, and it was actually like just the original software, I would 100% will play it because I've just heard so many great things about it.
Able to relive a childhood game per the video game.
Okay, I see the link. It's fine. I know what it is. I see the link. I'm gonna look at it after the stream. Okay, and then I'll return to you. I'll try to give you all the feedback that I can. If I ever like come across some error or something, I'll let you know. All right. For sure, man. I appreciate it, by the way. I actually like playing some indie games made by other people. It also inspires me as well, so I appreciate it.
Heritage Foundation. Quote, VSA's position forces researchers to explore extra legal methods to access the vast majority of out-of-print video games that are otherwise unavailable. I like the word vast majority.
Forces researchers to explore extra legal methods to access majority of out-of-print. Yeah, I mean, of course they're searching for and looking for extra legal methods for video game preservation. It's like, what do you... It's like, yeah. I mean, yeah. If it's not legal, then people are going to do it illegally. Like, yeah. That doesn't make it right. It's just people are going to do it. Same thing with prohibitionary in the United States, you know? Back then, booze and alcohol was illegal. What happened? Everyone started doing it the illegal way. Well, it's just what happens. Oh my god, you guys can't even see me. Lights on. Much better.
Of out-of-print video games that are otherwise unavailable. I like the word extra legal. Let's just call them enhanced acquisition techniques. TLDR, researchers, academics literally have to pirate or hunt down secondhand copies and basically say to their students, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you all know where to get this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's an open secret in the industry, and this is an open secret in the video game development and designer like university courses or degrees, if you ever take them. This happens a lot, rightfully so, right? You can't really blame them, because like these, like, you're essentially trying to raise another generation or the next generation of video game developers, video game designers, and then what happens? Well, they're not able to play any of the old games. So, well, their professors sometimes, direct them, let's say, to a certain pathway that leads them to somehow acquire these games so they can actually play them, so they can actually learn about the old games, so they can actually experience the old games, so they can actually have a more complete understanding of how to design a video game, how, like, see how it actually evolved throughout the years, right? For the last, like, 20, 30 years, essentially. So yeah, this happens. This is like an open secret, essentially.
Benefits nobody, including the companies the ESA represents. And so the combined efforts of the SPN and the VGHF have completely exposed the ESA, that they're acting irrationally, maliciously, and out of fear. Sadly, though, they have convinced the one government body who holds all the power. But the good news is the fight is not over, and their framing is transparently simply wrong. And that's where I've got a banger for you. This banger comes from Brandon Butler. He's the Director of Information Policy at University of Virginia Library. Not the sort of guy that you're, used to just dropping hot bangers on us, but here's what he said. Quote, "It should also make clear to policymakers that these institutions deserve more and better tools to do their jobs, because the market will not preserve our history. That is not the market's job. If we lose access to our digital cultural heritage, it is not a market failure, it is a policy failure."
That's true. It's not the market's job to do it. It's not the market's job to preserve the history. It's market's job is to make money and make as much as money as possible. It has no obligation to actually preserve any type of culture or history. It's not required to do so in any way, shape, or form. It's not its job.
That's the point. The market is not the tool for every job. Sometimes policy is the right tool for the job. But what happens whenever corporate interests get their hands on policy? We lose. History loses. Art loses. So Americans, write to your representatives. The rest of us will genuinely be thankful. Oh boy, right. So policy matters.
Yeah, if you're a American, if you live in America, if you're watching this video, sure, go for it, man. You guys have that opportunity to go to your representatives, to actually write your representatives, to actually ask them, hey, can you look into this? So if you're American, if you're watching this video, definitely go do it. But yeah, it's like a great video. It's like 15 minutes long, really, really short. It's a really, really new video, quite popular actually, if you look at it. We took a look into the subject. Let's see what other people say. Piracy is legitimately game preservation now. I've actually heard that quote somewhere else as well, like a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, like a couple of times. If I'm not mistaken, it was from Some Ordinary Gamers, right? These are the same people that say we should get used to not owning games. That's true. You're not supposed to own a game, remember. You're supposed to play it on GeForce Now, or Google Strata, or whatever it was called that nobody remembers what it was. Or Steam for that matter. It just doesn't feel like it, but you don't own your games on Steam as well. You're just just borrowing them essentially. It's just a lease. Sees a painting in a museum, enjoys its beauty, you're under arrest. I mean, yeah, pretty much. I wouldn't go that far, but it's close. It's close. Yeah, I get the point that you're trying to paint across.